I can't remember when I first noticed the shadow. It was just there, lingering in the corners of my room, creeping along the walls in the dead of night. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a figment of my overactive imagination. But the longer I observed it, the more tangible it seemed. It began innocuously enough. I'd be reading in bed, the dim glow of my bedside lamp casting long shadows on the walls. I'd glance up, and there it would be, darker and more defined than the others, just out of reach. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just a natural occurrence, nothing to be afraid of. But deep down, I knew better. There was something wrong about it. The night it all went wrong started like any other. I was sitting in my room, the clock ticking past midnight, the air thick with silence. I had been feeling uneasy all day, a creeping sensation of being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, a chill running down my spine. But I pushed the feeling aside, convincing myself it was nothing. I switched off the lamp and crawled into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin. The room was pitch black, save for the faint sliver of moonlight seeping through the curtains. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw it again. The shadow. It was more distinct than ever, an inky blackness that seemed to pulse and shift. I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping it would be gone when I opened them again. But when I did, it was still there, and it had moved closer. I could feel my heartbeat quicken, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I tried to rationalize it, but every logical explanation fell flat. The shadow wasn't just a shadow, it was alive. I lay there, paralyzed with fear, watching as it crept closer. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, defying the laws of physics. It stretched and contorted, its edges blurring and sharpening at random intervals. I could hear a faint whispering, a susurrus of voices, that seemed to emanate from the darkness itself. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The whispering stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence. I could feel the weight of its gaze, a malignant presence pressing down on me. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. My body refused to obey. The shadow loomed over me now, its formless mass blotting out the sliver of moonlight. I could see something within it, a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me. They were a deep, unsettling red, burning with a malevolent intensity. The whispering resumed, louder this time, the voices overlapping in a chaotic cacophony. "Help me," I croaked, my voice barely audible. But there was no one to hear me, no one to help. I was alone, trapped in the dark with this thing. The shadow seemed to pulsate, growing larger, more defined. I could make out shapes within it, twisted forms writhing and contorting in agony. I tried to talk to someone about it, but how do you explain something like this without sounding insane? I became withdrawn, isolated, my paranoia consuming me. I could feel the darkness closing in, a relentless tide that I couldn't escape. And then, one night, it happened again. I was lying in bed, the light casting long shadows on the walls. I saw it out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement. The shadow was back, more defined, more menacing. I could feel its gaze, the whispering starting anew. "Join us," it said, its voice a cold, malevolent whisper. "Embrace the darkness." This time, I didn't fight it. I was too tired, too broken. I let the darkness wash over me, the cold embrace numbing my senses. I could feel myself slipping away, the world fading to black. And as I lay there, engulfed in the shadow, I realized the truth. The darkness wasn't just outside. It was inside me, a part of me. I had been running from it, but there was no escape. The shadow was my own, a manifestation of my deepest fears, my darkest thoughts. In the end, there was no escaping the darkness. It was who I was. And as I surrendered to it, I felt a strange sense of peace. The whispering voices quieted, the cold embrace becoming almost comforting. I was no longer afraid. I was one with the shadow, a part of the darkness. And in that moment, I knew I was finally home.